Before we get into using this kit contents real quick, I just wanted to go over, and this is available as a downloadable document, just kind of a basic summary of blisters. Goes over cause, prevention, and blister care. Real quickly, blisters happen whenever there's friction and you've got your skin rubbing against another surface. What happens is heat builds up and then there's a delamination in the upper layers of the skin, causing a pocket, if you will, and that pocket fills with fluid, and that's the blister. And if you want to think about it in those terms, it makes it easy to think about how do we prevent blisters, which is probably the best treatment of all, is to prevent them and not have to break out this kit. Keep it vacuum packed in your pocket. So what's the trick to prevention? Well, it basically is aimed at minimizing friction and moisture. So wear properly sized shoes or boots that are well broken in. Wear dry socks. So every time you break on the trail, if you're stopping for lunch, boy, that's a good time to take your boots off, change your socks, put on a dry pair, take your wet socks off, hang them on the back of your pack so that they can dry out. That's also a time to let your feet air out a little bit and air dry, and then take a close look and see if you're developing a hot spot. If you have a hot spot, that's that red sort of tender area. That's a pre-blister is the way to think of it, and we'll talk about how to manage that. And then of course you might want to think some other things that can help. Layering of socks, so a thin synthetic layer with a wool outer layer. The synthetic layer wicks away the moisture, keeps your feet drier. You can also think about those pre-made double layer socks. A little bit more expensive, but that might be an option for you. And then some other things to think of are padded insoles, foot powder, and you can even use a thin layer of Vaseline, or there's some commercial anti-friction creams that are available, and that can also be used to help keep your feet dry and decrease friction. So the whole point is prevention if possible, decrease friction, keep your feet dry. Let's talk about blister care if you end up getting a blister. So if you get a hot spot, the best thing to do is to take some thin MoleSkin or some adhesive medical tape. Some people even use duct tape. But clean the skin off. Apply some alcohol pad if you want. You can use alcohol pad and dry the skin that way. Get the skin oils off. Soap and water, and then air dry. Cut a piece of MoleSkin that's perhaps half an inch larger than the blister is tall, and maybe an inch longer than it is wide. Apply that to the, I shouldn't say blister, I meant hot spot. Apply that to the hot spot, and the idea is that you have a more robust surface now to take that rubbing force and hopefully decrease the friction. So if you get a hot spot, you want to treat that first, and the best way to do that is to apply a layer of tape to minimize those friction surfaces. If you have a small intact blister, what you want to do is, if they're not causing any discomfort and they're not in an area where there's going to be a lot of wear, you can leave them alone, or you can apply one of these pre-cut dressings. This is basically a piece of second skin made by Spenco and a surrounding bandage. So I would dry the foot, and again you can use an alcohol pad, dry the skin, get the skin oils off, apply this, and then of course fresh dry socks, and hopefully that will not progress into a bigger blister. Now if you have a bigger blister, what you want to do is make a decision point. Is it intact or is the blister broken? And they're kind of managed a little bit different. If the blister is intact and it's a large blister, what you want to do is to drain that blister but leave the skin or the roof of the blister in place. That's the best natural dressing, and that's the best prevention or sort of barrier against infection. So clean the blister, again, use soap and water and dry it, or an alcohol pad, and then a clean, and that's why I put in this kit a safety pin. Use a safety pin or a sharp toothpick from a Swiss Army knife, but pierce the blister, gently drain the fluid, and then apply a blister dressing. And that can either be one of these preformed Spenco blister pads, or perhaps you're going to take some MoleFoam, cut a disc with a hole in the center so you've got an isolating donut, and then apply a second layer on top of that as a cover. So you've got a cushion of foam as a donut that's isolating the blister, and then a cover, and then of course dry socks. Another option besides the foam would be a small donut, so a circular piece with a hole in the center, a little bit bigger than the blister, of just MoleSkin, and then with a cover on top. And that just keeps anything from rubbing on that blister. What you're trying to do is isolate it. That's the whole key. Now, if you have a blister with a small tear and it's already drained and the tear is small, then you treat it the same way as a blister that you drained. So the same dressings and treatment. But if the blister has a tear that's big and the skin is loose and floppy, the best thing to do is to take a small pair of scissors and a small pair of tweezers, and you want to gently pick up the roof of the blister and debride that. So you just gently cut around the edge, remove that skin, clean the surrounding area, and apply one of these isolating dressings or the Spenco blister pad. Now, you might say, why don't you put those in the blister kit? And that's a good question. The reason is because I have a small pair of scissors in my Leatherman Micra that I have with me all the time. It's usually in my pocket. And I also have a small pair of tweezers there. So you can use separate tools if you want to carry them. It's all up to how much gear you want to carry and how much you think you need it. You can also just use a pair of tweezers from a multi-tool and then gently use a razor blade. Not quite as convenient, but a little smaller package to carry than a pair of scissors. So it all depends upon what kind of tools you want and how comfortable you feel with having to have a pair of scissors or perhaps improvising and using what you have on hand. I've been pretty comfortable with just a razor blade, and my multi-tool works pretty well. Okay, I'm going to remove all of this, and I've got a blister simulator, and we'll go over actually using this stuff and managing some simulated blisters. Okay, well, the active mind is always looking for improvements, and as I was making this video, I realized, boy, there's a great way to carry some duct tape, and probably more than adequate duct tape for at least initial management. And certainly if other people in your party have these same kits, you've got more than adequate duct tape. So as I was folding this back up, I thought, that's a great place to store 2 pieces of duct tape. And I like this Gorilla brand duct tape, but any duct tape will work. So I've got 2 pieces on the back of my Spenco second skin. That's a great place. It's not going to stick to anything because it just peels off the back of this foil package. Great place to carry some duct tape. I also put these out here because another important, and this is a preventative measure, but I also carry one of these in my level 2 first aid kit, which I will be reviewing pretty soon, but a good large sized fingernail and toenail clipper. You can also use smaller ones, but I just find it easier to use these. And I think it's important to keep your nails trimmed when you're outdoors, especially hiking. You want to make sure that your toenails are not long and hitting at the end of your boot, which can cause actually a contusion of the nail bed and cause pain in your feet. So make sure that those nails on your toes are cut. And these are great clippers because they don't make a big curved cut. They make more of a flat cut, and it minimizes getting an ingrown toenail on the corners. So that's the importance of these. And you can use these for other things too. Certainly cutting fingernails and boy, a lot of things. I use these when I'm fishing. Good thing to have out in the field. They don't weigh very much, and this always is in my level 2 first aid kit.